everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your day to watch our child development presentation. We're sorry that we missed you in our live event, but hopefully you can join us for the next one. Our live event was presented by myself, Amanda Adams. I'm a home-based manager for Early Head Start program. April Smale is also a home-based manager for Early Head Start. Andrea Baker and Melissa Glenn are education managers for our Head Start programs, and Karen Ray and Kelly Carpino are education managers for our pre-K counts rooms. So let's talk about development. When we talk about that, who are we talking about exactly? First, we have our caregivers. So those are the adults, or sometimes, older siblings, teenagers in a child's life that are caring for them on a short-term or long-term basis. So it could be mom or dad, it could be a different relative, it could be staff at a daycare, it could be a babysitter. Anyone that is with that child that is caring for them is considered a caregiver, and they're going to be the ones that are working with that child to help them develop certain skills. So then we have our infants that we work with in our Early Head Start program. That is birth to 1 year of age. However, in the first month, we would typically consider them newborns, and we would refer to them as newborns until they're about a month old. Then they transition into the infant stage. We have our toddlers that are about 1, 2, or 3 years old. And then we have our 3, 4, 5-year-olds that would be considered preschoolers, whether or not they're attending a daycare setting, preschool, if they're just working on their development at home. Just that general age group is considered preschoolers. And if they're 5 to 10 years of age, so that would be usually about kindergarten to 4th or 5th grade, we call those school-age kids. So when we talk about child development, what exactly are we looking at? We're looking at stages of development, which are periods during which a child can perform certain tasks. So when we talk about what stage a child is going through, what kind of tasks are they working on? Is it an infant that's working on sitting? Is it a preschooler who's working on holding a pencil in the pincer grasp? What kind of tasks? And those are called developmental tasks. And those are those achievements that can be expected of children at various ages or stages of growth. So once we're able as caregivers to identify what stage of development that particular child is in, then we know what developmental tasks we can expect from them, and we know how to help them learn and help them grow that area of development. So what are we working on specifically here? One of the things we look at with kiddos is their physical development. So some examples of that would be walking, running, climbing. Those are all gross motor examples. And gross motor skills are the kiddo's ability to control large muscles in the body, like their arms and their legs. So again, like we said, walking, running, climbing, maybe playing sports once they're school age, maybe riding a bicycle. Those are things that they would be doing to build those large muscles. Then we also want them to work on their small muscles, so that's fine motor. And that would be mostly, their hands and fingers. One of the things, like I said before about learning how to use a pencil, but when they're toddlers, one of the things we can do to help them build those muscles is play with Play-Doh, practice putting small items into a bottle or a cup where they're really focusing on holding something in between two fingers and placing it specifically. Anything like that is helping build those muscles, and then when they get into school and they're working on things like writing, painting, cutting, things like that, they're ready to learn those skills and they have the muscles that they need to do it. We are also working on social development, which some examples of that would be smiling and playing with others. So this is how kiddos learn how to interact with their peers and how to build relationships with adults. When they're little, for anyone who's in our Early Head Start program, you'll know that we focus a lot on social development, because once the kiddos get into school, if they can have good relationships with the other students, if they can have healthy, positive relationships with the teaching staff, they are more geared up to learn some of those other skills like letters and numbers and puzzles and all of those other things that kids learn in school is so important that they can go in and be social with the other kids and the other adults that are in the classroom. We're also working on emotional development, which is how kids understand and regulate their emotions. So a lot of times with our age of kids, anywhere from that infant stage to the school agers, when we see some challenging behaviors coming out, either at home or in the school, a lot of times those can be related to that emotional development of the child. Do they understand how they're feeling? What's causing them to feel a certain way? Do they understand how to problem solve through those emotions? When they feel angry or frustrated, do they know how to problem solve through that? Or is it possibly coming out as a tantrum or an aggressive behavior or something along those lines? So that emotional development is very important, and it's also important to know that certain emotions develop in our kids way earlier than what you would maybe think. Things like anger and frustration and even things like shame, those develop before the kiddos are 5 years old. So those are some pretty tough emotions that even adults like us can struggle with sometimes. So if you really think about kids feeling that way and not understanding what that is or why they're feeling it, I think you'll understand the importance of emotional development, and as caregivers, our role in helping them to develop that. So we also look at their adaptive development, and those are the self-help tasks like dressing, eating. With little ones, it might be starting with finger foods and picking them up and putting them in their mouths. They get a little older. Can they use a spoon? Can they use a fork without spilling too much? Can they do buttons on their clothes when they're school age? Can they tie their shoes? Those are all very important life skills, but also important in their learning because they're learning to be independent, they're learning how to take care of their own bodies and themselves, but then also in school, there aren't enough teaching staff in a lot of the preschool and even school age classrooms to do all of that stuff for all of their children. So if we have kids in there that are able to do some of the basic self-help tasks, that's going to help the classroom on a whole run smoother, and that means more learning for everyone. Hand-eye coordination is the ability to work the eyes and muscle together to make complex movements. So with babies, you'll see them picking up blocks and banging them together or banging them on the table. For older kids, they start rolling balls or playing catch or doing things where they need to make sure their eyes and their muscles are working together. And that is a very important piece of development for them as they grow. Healthy habits is also very important when we talk about child development. Even though it's not a developmental area in itself, some of the examples include being active, getting enough rest, having good hygiene, learning about safety, and seeing a doctor. And these are all things that can indirectly affect a child's development. So if you have a child who's not getting enough sleep, they're going to be tired and cranky. And when they're tired and cranky, they're not going to be practicing those developmental skills the way they would if they were fully rested. If they're not seeing the doctor regularly, there may be an underlying condition that we're not aware of that could be making them feel sick or tired. And that's definitely going to affect their ability to practice those developmental skills. So having those healthy habits, and especially at a young age so that they grow up having those kind of ingrained in their daily routines, is extremely important. Cooperative play is the child's ability to cooperate with other children towards a common goal. So we see this kind of really blossom in preschool and in school age kids, and that's when they're playing with other kids. They're playing a game together. They're maybe playing tag or hide and seek. Maybe they're building something out of blocks together, but they're cooperating with a peer in some sort of goal during their play. And that is a huge, huge way to foster that social development and help them learn how to interact with their peers. We also have solitary play, which is just when a kiddo is playing by themselves, which is also important because it fosters, again, that independence. It helps their creativity and their cognitive development whenever they're coming up with their own games, they're creating their own works of art or building their own structures, things like that. That's another very important piece of their development. And then parallel play. So this we see a lot with our younger kiddos when they're playing alongside other children. So you might see this in maybe older infants up to maybe early preschool age. And this is when they're playing with similar objects or they're playing in a similar area, but they're not playing together yet. They're kind of watching each other, seeing what other kids are doing with toys or just kind of checking each other out. But they're kind of playing next to each other and they're not quite engaging yet. Okay, we also work on our language development, and that starts with receptive language, which is the child's ability to understand language. And this starts pretty much at birth and possibly even, during the pregnancy, because there are studies that show babies in utero can hear voices and are starting to already pick up on that language that is surrounding them. So a child's brain, whenever you are talking to them, is taking in what you're saying and connecting it to what they're seeing in the world around them. So even young babies, some people might think, oh, they're just babies, they don't understand what I'm saying, I don't talk to them very much. But in reality, when they're listening to you or hearing you speak your native language, their brain is storing all of that information and they're going to use it later on when they start to use their expressive language, which is their ability to use the language themselves to express their feelings, wants, and needs. So that's when they start, they'll start babbling, they'll start saying single words, they'll start stringing words together, and eventually they're speaking in full conversations back and forth. But they can't get to that point unless they get that receptive language first from their caregivers. Articulation is something that they will start looking at mostly in preschool and then through maybe kindergarten, first grade. They really want to make sure that kids are forming their sounds correctly. Articulation is the formation of clear and distinct sounds in speech. So are they saying the sounds of all of the letters in the correct way? Are they forming the correct, are they using their tongues and their lips and forming them the correct way to say a specific sound? Because that's an important piece of language whenever kids are getting older and they're starting to have those conversations with people, to make sure that, for one, other people can understand what they're saying, but also just to make sure that the muscles in their mouths are working correctly and making sure everything is the way it should be. Cognitive development is basically how children think, how they explore the world around them, and how they problem solve. So it's kind of a running joke in early childhood education. Anytime we ask families or caregivers, if your child wants something and it's up high, will they get a chair, will they get something and climb up to get it? And most people kind of laugh and think of a specific circumstance and say, oh yeah, they know how to get something when they want it. And as frustrating as that can be as a caregiver, that is a good sign that your child is developing their cognitive abilities. They're learning how to figure things out on their own. They're learning how to get something that they want by themselves without having to ask for help. They're learning how to use tools in the environment around them to solve a problem. How do they think and explore? Are they able to notice patterns in things that they see around them, like colors or shapes? Those are all really important for their ability to understand and interpret the world around them. And then also, when they get into school, they're going to be learning all sorts of things, like mathematics and grammar and things that those early skills will help them with. So as caregivers, then, what can we do to help our children with this development? We can nurture them, which is just simply providing love, support, attention, encouragement, um, letting the children that we're caring for know that we are there to support them, that we are willing to help them work on those skills, that we love them, that we are supporting not only results but also attempts at developmental skills, and just having that support from an adult or, like I said before, even an older sibling, teenager in a child's life can be a big factor in their development. We can use discipline, proper discipline, which is just a way to shape behavior in young children. And there are definitely different methods of discipline that are recommended for different developmental stages of children. If that's something that you would like more information on, please let someone from our programs know, because we have a lot of research and data and suggestions that we can share with you that would be individualized for your child and your family. But basically, you want to make sure that you're having structure for your child, the child that's in your care. Structure and discipline and routines, those are all very important for success later in your child's school career, because that is what's going to be expected of them when they're in the classroom. They're going to follow a routine there. They're going to be expected to be able to learn the rules and follow the rules. And if they're doing those things, they're going to get way more out of the content that their teacher is working on with them. So we can provide imaginative toys for our kiddos, and those are toys that basically stimulate their imagination and creativity. So it could be art supplies, because there's no end to what they can do with those and what they can create. It could be blocks, because they can pretend they're little cars and zoom them around, or they can build a tower. They can do anything that comes into their imagination with toys like that. And then we can also provide them sensory toys, which have different textures and shapes and even sometimes scents to them, that are kind of stimulating those senses of the child as they play with them, and that really fosters development. So things like Play-Doh. I myself am not a big fan of slime, but that's the thing with the kids right now, and it is a great sensory toy. Even for the babies, we have toys like rattles and balls, sensory balls that crinkle when you squeeze them. Anything like that is engaging those senses, and that's going to further the development of that child in that moment. Scaffolding is something that we can do as a caregiver that helps a kiddo move from one level of their development into the next. So a really easy example of this is when you have a toddler that's working on taking steps, and they get up and they start taking those first steps, and they're holding onto your fingers, and as they keep going, you slowly pull your fingers out and hope that they continue that forward motion. But that is what scaffolding is. It's giving that little bit of help that they need to get to that next step, but allowing them at the same time to do it on their own, and just kind of being there to support them as they do that. Action toys are really focusing on that physical development. So it could be, for babies, it could be something that they walk behind. For toddlers, it could be a tricycle. For older children, it could be balls or bicycles. Anything that's going to get their bodies moving is considered an action toy, and that is a really, really fun and simple way to help them build that physical development. Imitative toys are used during pretend play. So it could be play food, it could be anything that they are imitating what they see us as caregivers do. So they could be picking something up and pretending it's a phone and talking on. They could pretend to cook dinner. They could be pretending to do laundry. Anything that they're doing to imitate something that they've seen you or someone else around them do is considered imitative play, and that is also a very big part of development for children. So there are some tools and strategies that we use to monitor and encourage this skill building. If you have ever attended some of our past events, we talked a little bit about shared book reading in our paint and cuddle that we did in December, but we've also covered these in some of our literacy trainings in the past couple years. But these are basically just very simple strategies you can use while you're reading books with your child to help increase their language and vocabulary development. So shared book reading modeling is just pointing to and naming pictures in a book. So that is building that vocabulary, whether it's, a little wee baby that's just learning single words, or maybe a school-age child that's looking at a science book and you're explaining to them what a telescope is, or a volcano. Anytime you're naming pictures in a book, you're modeling and you're helping them build vocabulary. So another shared book reading is expansion, which is adding descriptor words. So if you're looking at a book with a toddler and they point to the picture because you've been doing modeling with them, they point to a picture and say dog, you'll say, yes, that is a big dog. So now you're taking the vocabulary that you've already taught them and you're helping them build upon that by adding some of those descriptor words. And then the last one we're going to talk about today is the shared book reading elaboration, which is explaining circumstances surrounding events in a story. So this would be more for probably your older preschool or school-age kids. But when you're looking at a book and there's something going on in the story, just asking them questions about, what do you think is happening? Have you ever seen anyone do this before? If they're, say, making a meal in the book, the family, talking to them about, what kind of meals do we make in our home? Have you seen us do this before? Have we done this as a family? And just really helping them think about what's happening in the story and elaborating on that. In early Head Start, and pre-K counts, we also use developmental screeners that will help identify your child's strengths and then identify possible delays that they might have in their development. In the preschool rooms, we typically use the Battelle Developmental Inventory, and for early Head Start, we use the Ages and Stages Questionnaire, which is on the 3rd version, so that's the ASQ3. And these are not meant to diagnose your child with anything. It's just a way for us to get a quick snapshot of their development in all of the different areas that we've talked about, and just identify, where are they really doing well? What development are they very strong in? And are there any areas that maybe we should focus more on to help catch them up to where they're at with their other development? We also use a system called Teaching Strategies Gold, and this is more how we monitor their development throughout the program year. So we do the screening to get a quick snapshot, and then we use Teaching Strategies Gold to kind of monitor their development throughout the year. And that's what we use, all of the observations that we do, whether we're taking observations down during an early Head Start home visit or the teachers are doing observations in the classrooms. Those are all getting stored in this system, and then we can generate reports from that to help create the individualized curriculum plans for each of our enrolled children. And that kind of shows us, overall, these are the areas they're strong in. These are the areas that there may be a little bit room for improvement, and so those are the areas we're going to hit hard over the next couple months in our activities and our focused work with the children. And then if there are continued concerns, or we feel or you feel that there might be something more in a certain area of development that needs to be addressed, we can do a referral to early intervention, and we work with them and the caregivers for the child to create a plan that really focuses on a specific area that there might be a delay in development for a child. If you're working with early Head Start and you have a child that's birth to 3, That would be considered an IFSP, which stands for Individualized Family Service Plan. And that would set up goals for therapists to be coming into your home, usually once or twice a week, and helping to teach you things you can do with your child every day that will help that specific area of development grow. If your child is school age or in preschool, they would have an IEP, which is an individualized education plan, and those are meant to be utilized in the school environment, and that's going to give their teacher some ideas on how they can focus some activities and strategies for that child to focus on a specific area of development that they might be finding challenging. Okay, so that's our entire presentation. Again, if you're listening to this and you weren't able to make it to our live event, I apologize. We were able to play some fun games afterwards and make these terms be a little bit more fun, but hopefully you can catch us for the next one. And if you ever have any questions, please reach out to your Head Start, Early Head Start, or Pre-K Count staff. We always want to work with families to foster your child's development, and we're always here to answer questions. All right, have a great day.